Hello, government students. Hey, we're going to go fast today. We're going to be looking at the leadership in the legislative branch of the United States. And as I move pretty fast to get through this presentation, be sure to take notes. And if you need, be sure to pause this video and get the notes that you need. You need this information, I guarantee you, in your notes. Okay, so let's get started. I have a picture here to get started. This picture was taken during the 2023 State of the Union address when the president gives a speech in front of both the House and the Senate. And I have this picture here not because President Biden is in it, but because of the two individuals that are sitting behind him. These two individuals are the top people in both the House and the Senate. On the right-hand side, you have the Speaker of the House, whose name is Kevin McCarthy. We'll get into him a little bit more later. And we also have on the left-hand side, Kamala Harris. Now, you know that she is the Vice President of the United States, but she is sitting here in this moment that you see pictured, not in her role as Vice President, but in her role as the President of the Senate. The Vice President of the United States is automatically the President of the Senate. So with that said, let's get started. Let's look at the leadership in the Congress, and we're going to look at our own delegation in Congress who represent Northern Illinois. So let's get started by looking at the folks who represent us here in Northern Illinois. We'll begin with the Senate. We have a senior senator from Illinois who is Richard Durbin, a Democrat. He's called the senior senator because he's been senator longer than Tammy Duckworth. Tammy Duckworth is our junior senator from Illinois. Durbin, as you can see, is also a member of the leadership of the Senate. We'll get into what that means when we say he is the Senate Majority Whip in just a minute. But I want to tell you a little bit about Tammy Duckworth. She has an interesting background. Before she was a senator, she served in the United States military, and she was the pilot of a military helicopter, and she was stationed in Iraq. While she was stationed in Iraq piloting her helicopter, a rocket-propelled grenade hit her helicopter, and the helicopter crashed. She, in this crash, nearly died in this combat situation, and she was in the hospital for approximately a year. While she was in the hospital, she lost both of her legs, and she lost partial use of one of her arms. She's lucky to be alive. She's a double amputee. And so we are very, very fortunate that she survived that terrible incident. She's also, I believe, the first Asian American woman to serve in the United States Senate. And she has one other interesting first. She's the first woman to serve in the Senate who gave birth to a child while serving as a sitting senator. And in fact, now she has two children. So she has several firsts associated with her name and is a well-deserved recipient of the Purple Heart for her service and injuries served in combat. Okay, we have two members of the House of Representatives who are serving Northern Illinois. The first is in the Illinois 16th Congressional District, and that's Darren LaHood. And LaHood, I believe, was brought up in not Southern Illinois, but downstate Illinois near Peoria, I believe. And he has been in the House of Representatives for around, I believe, 6 or 8 years, somewhere in that area. We also have a brand new member of the House, Eric Sorensen, representing the 17th Congressional District. Now, LaHood is a Republican. Eric Sorensen is a Democrat. And Eric Sorensen grew up in Rockford, Illinois. He went to Boylan High School. He was a weatherman here in Rockford for quite a few years. And then he moved and became a weatherman in the Quad Cities area. So before he was a member of the House of Representatives, he was a meteorologist or a television weatherman. Here are the districts. LaHood's district is this green one that stretches from East Dubuque in the far northwest corner of Illinois along the Wisconsin state line. Then it snakes around in mostly rural areas with a little corner of some cities, but mostly rural areas. And this is mostly a Republican district. In fact, this district was drawn in such a way that it was pretty much guaranteed it would be Republican. The Illinois General Assembly drew this district. They tried to squeeze as many Republicans into one district as they could so that the neighboring districts would tend to vote Democratic. the General Assembly that draws congressional districts is controlled by Democrats, so they tried to draw them for Illinois in such a way that it will guarantee Democrats get a majority in the congressional delegation. Here's Eric Sorensen's district. It includes a Democratic voting area of Bloomington, a Democratic voting area of Peoria, the Quad Cities, and a Democratic voting area of Rockford. So it's pretty much guaranteed that this district will go Democratic, as indeed it did. So you can kind of see that. We're going to get into this idea of designing districts in such a way that it favors a political party in a few weeks. Let's look at some more leadership positions. The Speaker of the House. We have Kevin McCarthy. We've already talked a little bit about him. That is probably the most powerful elected position in our government after the President of the United States. The Speaker of the House has pretty much control over what the House of Representatives is going to consider in the way of legislation. On the other side of we have the Senate, and the presiding officer of the Senate is called the President of the Senate. That is automatically the Vice President of the United States. This position, unlike the Speaker of the House, though, has very little true power. It's more of a ceremonial role. The Vice President or President of the Senate will open each session of the Senate. You know, we call this Senate session into order kind of thing. She will swear in new members to the Senate. But otherwise, the only time she really comes in to do a job in the Senate is to break a tie vote. Okay, if there's a tie vote in the Senate, the President of the Senate will cast the tie-breaking vote. That's the only time the President of the Senate will cast a vote, is to break a tie. And we have we have 51 Democrats today in the Senate, 49 Republicans. In the previous Congress in 2022, it was a 50-50 split. So there have been several ties that she did cast a vote on to break the tie, and I would anticipate there could be a couple of times in the coming couple of years that she may have to do that again. Let's look at some other leadership positions. We have the House Majority Leader, who's kind of the next in line to be Speaker as long as the Republicans maintain the majority. Notice it says here that he's the leader of the majority party in the House. Well, yeah, technically, I guess he is, but really the House, the Speaker of the House is the true leader of the majority party, but technically the Speaker of the House is the leader of the entire House of Representatives, whereas the House Majority Leader is the leader of the party, the Republican Party in the House. Should Kevin McCarthy leave his role as Speaker of the House and the Republicans maintain control, Steve Scalise would almost certainly become the next Speaker of the House. We also have a House Minority Leader. That is currently Hakeem Jeffries. Should the majority party in the House change to the Democrats, then Hakeem Jeffries would almost certainly become the next Speaker of the House. He is the highest ranking Democrat in the House of Representatives. A couple of other positions. We have positions in both the majority and minority party called a whip. The whip's job is to find the votes that the leadership of the party want. In other words, let's say that I'm a member of the Republican Party and I'm kind of not wanting to vote for something that the leadership of the party wants me to vote for. I can guarantee you that in that situation, Tom Emmer, the majority whip, is going to come to me and he's going to make some negotiation and try to convince me to vote the way that the leadership wants me to vote. That might involve making a deal like, okay, you vote for the way we want you to vote. We'll make sure that we support you in whatever issue you would like to have considered by the House, that kind of thing. They negotiate and whip up the votes among the members of their party to do what the leadership wants them to do. Okay, one other congressional leadership role is only found in the Senate, and that's the President pro tempore. We oftentimes just call that the President pro tem. This position, the President pro tem, is the presiding officer of the Senate when the President of the Senate, the Vice President, is not there, which is most of the time. The Vice President is only in the Senate for certain, times, like casting that tie-breaking vote, that sort of thing. Otherwise, the President pro tem is the presiding officer. This is ceremonial. It doesn't have really true power. It's just a ceremonial honorary position, and it always goes to that person in the Senate who has the most seniority within the majority party. So the Democrats have the majority right now. Patty Murray is considered the senator with the most seniority among the Democrats. So she gets to be the president pro tempore of the Senate. It does have a constitutional role, which we'll get to later, but mostly it's just a ceremonial position. A couple of more leadership positions. The true power in the Senate, the most powerful senator, is the Senate Majority Leader. Remember, the President Pro Tem and the President of the Senate, they don't really have much power in the Senate. It's the Senate Majority Leader that determines the agenda of what will be considered in a legislative way in the Senate. It is the center of power in the Senate. Richard Durbin is the majority whip. Again, just as in the House, the whip's job is to whip up support for whatever the leadership of the Democrats or Republicans want the members to do. So it is the second most powerful. Majority whip is the second most powerful Senate position after the Senate Majority Leader. I do want you to remember the names of Chuck Schumer, the Senate Majority Leader, and Mitch McConnell, the Senate Minority Leader. Should the Republicans get the majority in the next election, Mitch McConnell would almost certainly become the Senate Majority Leader, and Schumer would likely become the Senate Minority Leader in that case. So I want you to remember those names, and remember Durbin's name as well, since he is our own Illinois Senator and a member of the leadership. Okay, let's move on. Let's look at some pay and perks, okay? Yearly pay for these folks. If you're just a regular rank and file member, not a leader in either the House or the Senate, you make $174,000 a year. That's a pretty good chunk of change. I will say, however, that these people have to maintain 2 households. You have to have a home in the district that you represent, or if you're a senator, in the state you represent. You also have to live somewhere in the Washington, D.C. area. So, you know, it's pretty expensive. You have to have 2 households. So that pay is needed. Definitely, they need to make a good income. The President Pro Tem and the majority and minority leaders of the Senate all make the same amount, $193,400. That's pretty good, almost $20,000 more than the regular rank and file members. Speaker of the House makes even more, $223,500. The Vice President and the Senate, and of course the Senate President, same position, $227,300. So as you can see, as you move up the leadership ranks, your pay moves substantially with it. Okay, let's close out by looking at some non-salary benefits. Franking privilege. You get free postal service as long as you don't use that postal service for re-election purposes. So I get about once or twice a year a letter from my congressman telling me about the things that he's doing for his district, okay? And that's good. I like to know what my congressman's doing. That's the purpose of the franking privilege, to maintain communication with your constituents, the people that you represent. You also have immunity or legal protection from certain legal cases for like a minor infraction, like speeding or something like that. If Congress is in session, then I won't be stopped for speeding, okay? Minor infractions like that, I'm protected. Now, if I commit a felony of some sort, that's a whole nother story. I would be subject to prosecution in that case. But for minor things, as long as Congress is in session, no problem. I won't be given a speeding ticket. You have a staff, as you can see. You get your health care through the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare, and you get a pension. Retirement benefits once you leave office. So with that, we're going to stop our presentation. Again, make sure you take good notes and check Canvas to see if there's an assignment. We'll talk to you later.